Wainaina, Director of the International Center for Policy and Conflict, or the ICPC. Welcome to the JSO interview.
Thank you, John.
Perhaps we might start by your describing what the ICPC does.
ICPC is primarily a watchdog non-government organization focusing on human rights, development, and human security.
A good enough explanation for me to ask you, as a watchdog NGO, we have a new government, thanks and praise for peaceful elections, so many days, so many weeks into a new dispensation. Are you, as a watchdog institution, happy with what you're seeing?
The transition of the executive from the old order to the new order, including establishing the government, has taken substantively long, which primarily tells you that there was no work that has been done in terms of preparing which sort of transition government will come in place, basically.
Right, okay, fine. So you're saying things aren't that good. I'm going to take you on some issues of moment that every Kenyan has been reading about, rather at random on my little list here of bullet points, and say, okay, let's think about the formation of our new government, this whole idea of a lean, mean, 18-member cabinet secretaries, the formation of government, new parliament, senators. How's that going?
I think it's quite good, but the problem is that as usual in a completely new setup of things, and where there does not exist a very clear policy framework on how to go about many of these processes, these are some of the hard teething problems.
Why should you talk about a absence of a policy framework when we're giving all thanks and praise for our new constitution? That is the policy framework.
The constitution is a normative framework, but you need what you call a solid policy framework that now gives you the clear direction on how to go about things, consistent with the constitution.
So you're trying to say that our founding fathers, so to speak, didn't work out how they were going to implement what was on paper. They're making it up as they go along.
And I want to give an example.
Right.
If you look at the national land policy, and you look at the chapter 5 on the national on land and environment in the constitution, that chapter has its foundation at the national land policy. So before we came to enacting that chapter of the constitution, already had a national land policy. In fact, the entire national land policy finds its anchorage in the constitution. Now, what is going to happen is that you have enacted a number of registrations. Those registrations are in tandem with the national land policy, the constitution, and in terms of the operationalization and their working. That's very, very important.
Right, but I'd like to go to the visual image here of our members of parliament in parliament, our senators debating the Chord coalition with a sort of minority, the idea of the opposition. Is this working? Or are we, in essence, have we formed a government which is going to be like the single party state of the early Kenyatta era?
I see an odd order. We have not seen a mind shift. We have not seen an entire shift of way of doing things. When I observe the members of parliament, I observe the whole of this house. One thing that strikes me, they are still operating as though they are in the old single parliament. What they ought to have understood is this: they are completely distinct from the executive. So we are expecting that the entire house, that's the entire parliament, that's both the National Assembly and the Senate, they exist as the core watchdog of the executive, regardless of which party you belong.
You're more knowledgeable than I am. Comment on the fact that so many days into our new government, we still haven't got the full complement of however many cabinet secretaries, with the idea that there might be another 2. Are you happy with the way that has gone?
As per their, how they have set up their cabinet of 18, I think now they have the 18 cabinet secretaries.
Right.
The biggest challenge is they have not appointed the principal secretaries. Principal secretaries are actually the accounting officers of each of those cabinet ministries that we have set up. The ministers who deal with matters policy, but in terms of implementation and accounting is the principal secretaries. Also, another challenge was that initially there was no clarity of which cabinet secretary handles what. So we also faced with an entire harmonization and restructuring of the entire government to be in tandem now with the new cabinet portfolios as they have been set up.
We're moving on. I've got parliamentary performance, the performance of Parliament itself. Do you feel that you said enough sort of tangentially on that topic?
No, I don't think that we have seen, first, as I have indicated, we have not seen a shift. The drafters of this constitution, as well as the people who established these institutions, were very, very clear that there was going to be a clear separation of powers. The Parliament was given the primary responsibility of legislative oversight. They are the ones who are supposed to look at resources allocation, making sure that those resources are allocated correctly, they are used in the right way, but they have no functions whatsoever in executing or implementing the issues touching on resources. That's why the challenge of something like Constitutional Development Fund, the MPs are still obsessed that they are the ones who are responsible for the CDF money. We established devolved government, and the Constitution is very, very clear that the sovereignty will of the people will be exercised at the national and at the county level. Therefore, the institutions we have established, which we have given them specific powers, they have to operate within that armpit. And that's why, for instance, the Parliament is a creature of the Constitution. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission is a creature of the Constitution. So what the Constitution have done is to demarcate institutions and give them powers and functions which are completely independent of that. Should there arise a dispute between those institutions, that's why the judiciary exists as the independent arbitrator in those kind of things.
The vetting process, we're seeing a lot of our leaders going through microphone exchanges. Comment.
I think let me make one thing clear to Kenyans, because this has been the single biggest problem. When we talk about vetting individuals, we are not ascertaining whether they are guilty or not. When you talk about until you are proven guilty, that is a principle within the administration of criminal justice. It's about fair trial. If you are before a magistrate or even a judge cannot pronounce whether you are guilty or not before you have given a due process to be able to prove that. When you are dealing with ethics and integrity, it actually falls in between serious reasons or grounds to believe that you have certain matters touching on you. But
I would also say, with respect, I would also say that in your explanation, look at what the Mwananchi is saying. They're saying there is a certain gentleman, Mr. Kimemia, we have got all this information on him. He ought not to be secretary to the cabinet. The day after that, he's sworn in. So why the commissions? Why people earning money, huge sums of money, to be totally ignored?
You see, that's the point I was making.
Right.
That, you see, and I want to give you examples. The reason why we got Nancy Baraza out of judiciary was not that the tribunal that investigated Nancy Baraza was very categorical. There existed sufficient grounds that that person continued to be in that office will not bring honor and dignity to that office.
Right.
Subsequently, it was not a judicial process.
But
so this is very clear.
So therefore, I'm asking you to say, as an analyst, as an activist, the appointment of somebody like Mr. Kimemia to that position, good or bad, yes or no, was it a good thing? Was it a right thing? Explain it to a 10-year-old.
The moment serious issues have been raised on you,
right,
it does not matter whether you are guilty or not.
Right.
It's very clear.
Right.
In fact, even in the past, even before this constitution came into place, the moment you have been adversely mentioned, you are supposed to step aside. That is the fact. So therefore, substantive issues were raised, like for instance, on Chil as the cabinet secretary. He kept saying, I'm going to supply documents. You and me do not even know up to today whether those were given. There is a lady who is in charge of East African... Kadi. Issues were raised. Issues were raised about Kimemia and many others. But what we are faced with, because there are three reasons why this is key, John, and it's important for Kenyans to understand. We want to create institutions of integrity. We want to defend and making sure that the persons who are holding those institutions are persons of integrity.
Right.
And that is that the moment you have the integrity of the institution in place, people got confidence and trust in that institution. I want to give you an example. The
Right.
judiciary.
Right.
People, when we engage in a very thorough vetting of judges and even the appointment process, Kenyans gained confidence and trust in that institution. That's why they chose to take their disputes there.
Right.
So because you created an institution of integrity.
I take your point
That's the
entirely.
point. For me, it's very, very important for Kenyans to understand that.